What happens when a woman taunted as too big to be loved is suddenly chosen not out of pity but for truth? What secrets, what trials, what redemption await her in the home of a lonely cowboy and his sons? The train pulled away as laughter filled the dusty Montana air. Too fat to marry, not worth a dime, someone shouted and the crowd chuckled. But in the cruel silence, a widower with two sons stepped onto the train. He did not look at her body. He did not hear the taunts. He only looked at her eyes that bore decades of sadness. And in front of everyone, he put his hand on his son's shoulder and said the words that shook the entire station. "This is Clara, and she's the one we need." The whisper stopped. The town stood still. And Clara, abandoned just moments before, feels her world change forever. Stay with us because this is more than just a love story. It's a story of dignity, restored wounds, healed, and family found in the most unexpected ways. You know, there are stories that are never told in words. They are written in the lines on a face, in the furrows of a brow, and in the mysterious silence within one's eyes. They are the stories of those who have learned to suppress. And this is the story of Clara, a woman at 50. Clara was not born to be a mail-order bride. Once she had been a lively young girl with a heart as wide as the summer sky over the fields. But then life taught her cruel lessons. Her first love was not a song, it was a sentence. She was forced to marry an older cold man who treated her like furniture to decorate his home, not a woman to be cherished. He wanted a wife to display, not to love. She lived her youth in terrifying silence, where her laughter withered away like a flower deprived of water. When the marriage ended in abandonment, Clara faced the pain alone. She returned to her family, but instead of comfort, she found reproach. "If only you were prettier, a little more graceful," they said. Those words, like stones, built an unbreakable wall around her heart. Over time, her body changed. It grew fuller, as if storing and shielding all the pain and cruelty she had endured. Her body was not a mistake, it was shelter. It was armor that kept her safe from judgmental stares. And so at 50, Clara set out west. Not to find a perfect husband, but to give herself one last chance. She knew it was a gamble. She had written letters sending a photograph from many years before, when time had not yet carved so many lines into her face. She hoped that someone might see hope in her eyes and accept her. When the train pulled into the station, Clara's heart pounded. Younger, slimmer, prettier women were claimed one by one. Men smiled, held their hands, and walked away with them, leaving Clara behind. The fear she had hidden for so long began to rise. A man came forward, the very one she had written to. He saw her, and the smile on his lips vanished. His eyes swept over her body. Then he shook his head and turned toward another woman. Others glanced her way, chuckled, and walked off. Clara stood alone on the platform among the whistle of trains and the whispers of the crowd. She did not cry. She had learned long ago not to. She had learned to bury feelings deep inside, like a river flowing unseen underground. The pain she felt was not new. It was the reopening of an old wound. The train that carried the hopes of other women vanished beyond the horizon, leaving Clara behind with only herself, a shielded heart, and a small bag. She had suppressed so long she no longer knew how to release her feelings. Would anyone see her? Would anyone listen to the hidden story inside her? There was one. His name was Thomas. Thomas had been waiting quietly for his friend. A craftsman with calloused hands but gentle eyes, he had lost his wife years before. Loss had taught him this: beauty cannot heal a lonely heart. Only kindness can hold a family together. He lived with his two sons, Caleb and Luke. They were mischievous and full of energy, but when they saw Clara left behind, they grew uncharacteristically quiet. They didn't see her differences. They only saw a woman who was hurting. Their innocent hearts felt her sorrow. Thomas watched it all, the rejection, the laughter that turned heads. Each laugh cut into him like a knife reopening a wound. He did not judge those men. He knew fear of difference can make people cruel. But he also knew that when someone needs a hand, that is when you offer it. He looked at his sons. With just a glance, Caleb squeezed his brother's hand and looked back at Thomas with a firm face. They too had known absence. Now they saw another who shared that pain. Thomas drew a deep breath. He knew the choice would change his life and his children's forever. To walk toward Clara in front of the whole town meant inviting ridicule. But he didn't care. He looked only at Clara's eyes, empty, yet filled with sorrow, and he saw a beauty others had missed: the beauty of courage, resilience, and a heart weathered but unbroken. He began to walk. The departing train whistled one last time, like a farewell to the past. Clara stood frozen, ready to fade away in this station, waiting for another train to take her somewhere she could disappear. But she did not vanish. Thomas walked toward her steady and calm, like a shepherd approaching a lost sheep. His boys followed close, their eyes curious and concerned. When only a few steps remained, Thomas stopped. He said nothing of her past, the ridicule, or her broken hopes. He only smiled, a warm, gentle smile she had not seen in years. "Hello," he said, his voice deep and soothing, like a river over stones. "I'm Thomas." Clara looked up, surprised, cautious. She had learned kind words often hid traps, but Thomas continued softly. "I know who you are. I read your letters. I know you have a beautiful heart." He turned to his sons, resting a hand on Caleb's shoulder. His voice was steady, loud enough for Clara and even the onlookers. "Boys, this is Clara. She may be the one we need." Clara felt a jolt run through her. Those words were not an invitation. They were acknowledgement. Thomas had not said she was what he needed. He said she was what they needed. Little Luke looked up at Clara with innocent trust, shyly reaching for her hand. In that fragile moment, Clara saw hope she thought was gone forever. Thomas had not rescued her. He had seen her and given her the chance to rescue herself. From that moment, Clara's life shifted. She walked with Thomas and the boys, her heart trembling between suspicion and fragile hope. The road stretched across the dry Montana fields, rolling hills like giant waves asleep. Silence hung in the air, broken only by footsteps and the wind over dry grass. Clara said nothing. Questions churned in her chest. Was Thomas truly kind, or was this pity another act ending in rejection? Fear had long been her companion, and it would not leave easily. When they reached his wooden house nestled in a valley, Clara was surprised. It was not grand, but it radiated warmth. Wildflowers bloomed by the door, an old wagon rested in the yard, and the scent of burning wood lingered. Inside the home was simple yet welcoming. Wooden toys scattered on the floor, a patchwork quilt lay draped over the sofa, and an old photo of a smiling woman rested on the mantel. Thomas had lost a wife and the boys had lost a mother. Yet their home was not cold, it was quietly filled with love. Clara's heart wrestled harder than ever. Part of her wanted to embrace this warmth. Another part warned her it was an illusion. She had trusted before and been betrayed. In those first days, Clara lived like a shadow. She ate silently, helped with chores mechanically, and avoided eyes. Thomas never pushed. He knew trust could not be forced. He gave her space, speaking only through small gestures, an extra cup of tea in the morning, a coat when the wind rose, a space left for her on the long bench. The boys, too, were patient. They did not demand she play with them. Instead, they brought her little offerings, a strangely shaped rock, a wildflower, a scribbled drawing. One afternoon, Luke placed a small wooden horse in her hands and walked away. Clara stared at it, and a strange warmth rippled through her. That night, sleep eluded her. Memories of ridicule at the station, of her husband's cold eyes, battled against Thomas's gentle voice and Luke's innocent gift. Perhaps she had come west not to escape the past, but to face it. Thomas was no savior. He was a mirror reflecting her own resilience and weakness, giving her the choice to heal. The next morning, while Thomas cooked breakfast, Clara quietly took the ladle from his hand and stirred the porridge. She said nothing, but her hands were steady warm. A small act, but a beginning. Days passed. Clara began to live again. She cooked meals, baked bread, brewed coffee, filled the house with sense of home. Caleb and Luke opened to her, sharing school stories, tales of wild horses and their little dreams. One evening, as she mended Caleb's shirt, he whispered, "You do that just like Mama." Clara's heart tightened. He wasn't replacing his mother. He was recognizing a bond. Thomas noticed. He saw Clara smile more, speak more, stop hiding her eyes. She was not a replacement. She was a missing piece. Clara's walls began to crumble. She learned that her worth lay not in others' cruelty, but in how she saw herself. One morning, she handed Thomas a cup of water after work. He met her eyes. They no longer held emptiness, but light. Clara had rediscovered herself, a woman of worth, compassion, and love. Thomas had not needed to save her. He had only believed in her, and Clara was finally free. Hope is like a seed, buried long in the dark, enduring storms, waiting for light, and when it finds light, it grows unstoppable. Clara's hope sprouted in Thomas's home. She cooked, taught the boys sewing, and baking, told them stories. Luke clung to her with innocent love. Caleb, still cautious, watched her with quiet admiration. One evening as the sun set, Thomas said gently, "I wasn't looking for a woman. I was looking for a partner, someone to share burdens and joys with me and the boys." Clara only watched the sunset, but her heart felt lighter than it had in years. That night she dreamed she stood again at the station, still alone but not afraid. A train stopped carrying children's laughter. Thomas stood there not to rescue her, but to invite her into a journey. She boarded, and this time she was not alone. When she woke, she knew she loved them. Not with a burning passion, but with a steady warmth, a gentle flame. Thomas returned home to find Clara reading to the boys, her face glowing in lamplight. Her eyes brimmed with love and peace. And he knew he was no longer a lonely father. His sons had found a mother. He had found a partner. Hope had sprouted. Would love now bloom? Life flowed gently. Clara filled the home with warmth, reading, cooking, sewing, listening. Thomas, usually a man of few words, began to share his story, struggles of raising boys alone, memories of his late wife. He never compared Clara to her. He simply shared. And in those stories, Clara felt kinship, two wounded hearts recognizing each other's scars. One afternoon, when a passing man sneered at Clara, Thomas stood before her, shielding her. "Don't mind them," he said firmly. "They don't see the real you. They never will." Clara looked at him and saw honesty, compassion, and peace. That night under the stars, Clara realized she was no longer alone. She smiled, genuine, unforced. Thomas smiled back and held her hand. It was no rush, no demand. It was the connection of two souls once broken, now found. Two people who had suppressed their feelings were finally ready to open their hearts. And this time, it was enough to write a happy ending.